Hi everyone, how are you? Good evening. I think the time now is close to 7 p.m. Don't get scared. I don't look the greatest. I'm tired right now. By this time at 7 p.m. I'm sort of starting to feel it. By 9:30 I'm really feeling it. And that's because I get up about 3:45, 4 o'clock to go to work. It all depends. But I'm doing this really quick video because I really wanted to comment on what took place on Sunday at the rally, the Trump rally. And I said, I'm gonna let it diffuse a little bit. I'm gonna let everyone say whatever they have to say, post whatever they have to post, and I'm just gonna wait because that's the right thing to do, to wait. And I said, you know what, if I don't do this now, I'm never gonna do it because I've had such a busy week. I haven't had the time to comment. I really wanted to comment yesterday, but I've been so busy. I haven't been able to, and better yet, I was more focused on the Yankee game, I gotta admit. So I was not gonna stop to do a video when I had so many things back to back and I had to take advantage of being able to watch the game. But in any case, I figured I'd say my piece for a few minutes. I did say that on a post that I would eventually, say what I have to say. So Sunday, as you know, they had a rally at MSG, and this comedian comes out and makes the comment that he makes, says what he says, and all hell breaks loose basically in less than an hour. I had no idea about what had happened. I was clueless until someone had sent me a clip, and they sent it to me under the assumption, I guess, that maybe I knew about what was said. And they weren't very thrilled, of course. So when I saw the clip, I said, oh my God. I said, that's impossible. There's no way somebody could say something like that. It's like you see that and it sinks in and then it doesn't sink in until after a little bit. So I was busy and I was out with a friend of mine, and I actually showed her the clip. I said, take a look at this. And she goes, no way. I said, yes. But I figured, you know what, that has to be a mistake or something. Why would somebody say something like that? But of course, as the night went on, it started spreading like wildfire. And by the time I got home, I had multiple texts on my phone. I had other messages that were being sent. People were curious, people wanted to know. Some people made it obvious they weren't thrilled. And it was just overwhelming. And I said, my goodness, what happened here? But, as shocked as I was, I wasn't planning to break a wall for it either. That's not what I was doing. I said, I'm curious. I want to know where this guy gets this from. Why did he make this comment? A floating island of garbage, basically. I'm paraphrasing. I said, I want to know, why was he so specific? Because he was specific when he spoke. It was too specific, and I said, I need to do some research on this guy. Who is he? Because I didn't know who he was. I do my research. I come to find out he's what you would call an insult comedian. He's an insult comedian. And he was hired to be part of the opening act. After I looked up his details, he is the one that did Tom Brady's roast. So I guess if you guys are into football and you saw that on ESPN, he did Tom Brady's roast. Okay. Afterward, I spoke to somebody else who's very familiar with everything that happens on the island, more familiar than I am, and I do keep track of what happens. And she tells me, she says, Diana, he's not that wrong. And I said, what do you mean? She says, we've got a problem with the garbage here. And sure enough, I go digging and looking and researching. And I said, oh my goodness, this is where he got his punchline from. This is where he got this from. And it was sort of astonishing because I didn't realize that there was that big of a problem with it. I think I heard about it before in the past. I didn't think anything of it. But I didn't realize how big of a problem it was that they had with the garbage. A very big problem. So much so that in 2017 and around 2015, they had went to the US government asking them to help because they were busting out at the seams because their landfills were overflowing. And the garbage was beginning to also come up at the beach. And I said, wow, this is horrible on top of everything else that they're dealing with. This is just bad to have to deal with that. I said, you know, it's not a good thing at all. Nobody wants to air out their garbage, right, so to speak. The comment was crude, but I think what was more crude, and this is my opinion, what was really more crude was the way he spoke about Latinos in general, the joke he made about them having a good amount of children. It was vulgar about it. For me, that was very offensive in the sense that it was too crude and it shouldn't have been said. And again, he's an insult comedian. This is what he does for a living. American comedy differs than Latin comedy. Two different perspectives, two different mentalities involved. And I said, you know, I can do one or two things here. I can do what everyone else is doing, posting in fury, flipping out, you know, you name it, they're doing it because they're angry, and rightfully so, rightfully so. Or I can try to look at what the comedian did from a three-dimensional perspective. And you may not think there is one. I think there's a three-dimensional perspective in everything. The first thing is it's a joke that fell flat, very flat, didn't resonate with a lot of people. And it's very possible he actually meant to speak about the garbage problem that they have. I'm saying it's possible. I'm not saying that's what he really did. But because he was so precise with the way he said it, I knew and I figured he had to have gotten this from somewhere. That there's a reason why he was so precise about it. Now, had he said, you know, had he added the Puerto Rican people to that joke, you know, he's targeting Puerto Rican people. So that also caught my attention. He simply said Puerto Rico. Either way, it was bad. No matter what, it fell flat because it wasn't funny and it was just very crude. The other side is, the other dimensional outlook you can have on this is that he was put there to speak in that manner to make sure that it backfired on this organization, because you're in the perfect city to make that happen. You really are, you know, to make a comment like that and have everything explode the way that it did. It was perfect, if that is what he did and if that is what he was hired to do, right? I don't know. Could be that. You can look at it from the third perspective, right? Where this is in fact how he views the people, how he sees how the people are from his mindset, and what he really thinks of them, that he personally thinks that they're garbage. Why do I say that you have to also look at it from that perspective? You know, behavior plays a role in a lot of things. And I can tell you, a lot of the times, we as Hispanic people, we can be very problematic with certain things. We can be just as vulgar and just as crude. People don't always like that. They just don't. They don't feed on that, and yet they could be crude and vulgar, but it does something to them in return. So I don't know how to really deal with it. What I can tell you is I'm not as angry as everyone else may be. And again, I think people who are born on the island and are from there have every right to be very upset. For us here, we may have family over there, but we have something else we have to be concerned with as well. And we can't lose sight of the big picture. We just can't. It's impossible. You just can't lose sight of it. You know what I find very offensive? Even more offensive than what was said on Sunday is what Puerto Rico has to deal with the majority of the time, and that there are no solutions, or there appear to be no solutions to the things that affect them in their daily living. The lack of proper electricity, the fact that they practically pay more in electricity than we do in the States, and they just can't get electricity. I would dare to say the electrical grid in the Dominican Republic works better than theirs. I have to say it probably works better than theirs. The lack of medical resources. It could take them up to 3 to 4 months, sometimes longer, to be able to see a simple specialist. We're not talking a specialist that specializes in the unknown of infectious diseases, 1 in a million, etc. Simple specialist. It could take them months to get to see one. You know what's offensive to me? When you've got the medical industry over there that is not paying attention and providing pediatric psychological services or psychiatric services to young people the way they need it. Out here, you can get that. Over there, it's a scarcity. It's a problem. It's also offensive, the fact that they pay 11% in tax for food. We don't even pay 11% in New York City. More offensive is the fact that their government has spent decades stealing money from them. You could blame the U.S. all you want. The U.S. has fault, yeah? Yeah. The blame is there, all the way around. It's not tied to one specific president. This has been more than 50 years that this has been this way. Why? Because each group comes in, does their own thing, and does what they feel is best for themselves and not for the people. But at the end of the day, the government of Puerto Rico holds, for me, the majority of the blame, because we give them money and they take it from the people. What are you doing with the garbage? The U.S. is giving you millions. What are you doing with the money? Squandering it, and the people don't see a dime. That's why you have certain artists that were complaining. I'm highly offended. I'm even more offended when the former president was in power and he stopped giving them additional money. You shouldn't be offended by that. Actually, that was a good thing, because the people aren't getting the money. Only the government is. It's offensive when you see high school students posting TikTok videos showing their schools falling apart, literally falling apart. They're falling apart. They're showing videos of them having to pay X amount of money to be able to use the laboratories so they can fulfill their requirements, so they can graduate. Why are they paying money for that? I believe Washington has a committee that was put together during the Obama era. I believe it was during the Obama era, if I can remember. And this committee was specifically built to be able to watch the finances in Puerto Rico, because they are busting at the seams financially. They are so broke, it's horrible. So they're watching their finances. But if you're watching the finances, then why are high school students posting these videos? What are you doing with the education fund if you're watching their finances? If you're watching their finances, then Why do parents have to wait months to be able to get pediatric, psychological, and psychiatric help for their kids? Aren't you supposed to be watching the finances to make sure they are appropriately going to where they're supposed to go? You're not doing that? Then what the heck are you good for? What do you exist for? Okay? Those things I find highly offensive. Very offensive. Because they're being strangled. Literally. Being strangled. And they deserve better. Like everyone deserves better. Okay? But this is just bad. And in my opinion, and I'm giving my personal opinion, they're even more offended because of the tension that exists right now. Elections are 5 days away. Please don't assume that it's just, oh, we're gonna pick a governor like everybody else. And no, right now, what's at stake is whether they're going to stay as a commonwealth, whether they're gonna choose to be independent, or whether they're gonna stay as a state or a free form. Very similar to the state. A lot of tension because people are moving in different directions on what they want. They go independent. For those that want independence, it's a big risk for those that do not because they understand what the danger is. I would love to see them go independent if they could, but the debt is too high. They will sink financially, emotionally. It will empty the island. Literally, they will not be able to move forward. You know, if you're going to go independent as a nation, as a country, you got to have a plan 15 years in advance. That's my opinion. 10 to 15 years in advance. You can't say we're going to vote for independence and then create a plan. No, that doesn't work well. It usually does not work well, especially when you're in debt and don't have a dime to your name. Okay? That doesn't work well. Statehood, well, statehood is a risk because they can lose their autonomy as a country, as we see them, as what they are, you know? Because it's special. It's Puerto Rico is special. The uniqueness is they're U.S. citizens. And they will lose that if they go independent. They will lose that. Statehood is they will become like every other state and lose the ability to keep Spanish as their English, as their dominant language, and then English as their secondary. That's also a big risk unless some measures are put into place where they can agree to that, to keep it as the primary language, amongst other things. And then they're staying as the Commonwealth. Some people are just tired of it because they see that they're being strangled, and no matter who they put in government as governor, they have yet to be able to find a secure government within their government, right? The body that will protect their interest. They've yet to be able to have that. It's unbelievable. Several decades later, and they still can't get the right people in play. They're upset. They have a right to really be upset. They're frustrated. There's tension. Elections coming up. There's a lot of things going on. They're not going to take the joke maybe the way other people would take it, because it wasn't the kind of joke that is considered to be a joke. It was a bad line all the way around. Another thing that I find very disturbing and offensive for me, right, I forgot to say this earlier, is the trend where realtors on the island are steering owners from the outside. They're bringing them in to take over the properties. They're selling the properties to them. Unfortunately, what this does is this hikes up the prices in the neighborhood, forcing people out of their communities and forcing them to find a way to be able to continue to pay the rent that they once paid. This is bad. This is disgusting. And who's to blame for that? I blame the island. I don't blame the U.S. because if you're the government and you're there, your job is to protect the people. It's to protect their interest. You're responsible for that. And you're allowing foreigners in through brokers on the island and through brokers outside of the island to be able to do this. That's offensive. So here's a little tip. before you get all offensive about all of this that's happening, focus on what's really important. Don't let it distract you to the point that you lose your ability to see straight, right? We've got elections coming up 5 days away. They're very important. Our voices need to be heard. Their voices need to be heard. The sad thing is that only those here can really help speak for them, right? For the people on the island. Puerto Ricans are citizens over there, those that live on the island, but they cannot vote in a general election. It's very disgusting considering the fact that we've got a large illegal immigrant population here that some are looking to take advantage to be able to vote in the elections. And literally some states are saying, sure, why not? That's bad when you've got 3.5 million people over there that can't exercise their vote. They can't say who they want to see over there. They're not allowed. But they're legal citizens, of course. They're just not as valuable, according to the U.S. government, right? So, why don't we look at what's really important? I think it's very important to stay firm the next 5 days, to stay in prayer, to look at what's ahead of you and what's to come. That's very important. I'm going to say just 2 more things, maybe 3. The first one is for those people that were going bananas on social media. I found that many of them were using the word xenophobia. It's xenophobic, and I'm not voting for so-and-so because they're xenophobic. Listen, I'm going to ask you not to use words that you don't know how to fully define. I don't care if you get offended. A mí me da igual. If you understood what the word xenophobia was, then you would come to understand that it is not really one word, but 2. And if you looked at the root of both of those words, you will come to understand, okay, that phobia means flight or fear. And the word xeno means to be able to have, a person or an entity. I don't think the joke was made because he's afraid of a group of people. That's literally what you're saying, that he was afraid of a group of people. He was afraid of a person or a number of persons. Don't use words that you don't know how to define, okay? Xenophobia is a very popular word amongst the woke, amongst those people that enjoy using that rhetoric and trying to apply it to everything, and yet that's not the original meaning of it. Okay, so stop using words that you really don't know how to define. Don't do that. That's number 1. Number 2, if you don't want to vote in these elections, no problem. Don't vote. Listen, go anyway to vote. And you can write in the name you want to write in. You're going to see it on your ballot. You're going to have a blank space on who you want to put in. Write down whatever you want to write down. If you don't want to vote for either one of these 2 parties, that's fine. But I'm going to ask you not to encourage others to do the same. You see, when you go and you say, I'm not going to vote for so-and-so, you're telling people to sort of do the same, especially if they admire you. If they have an admiration for you, they're going to follow what you tell them. Don't do that. Nobody needs to know whether you're going to vote or not. That is none of anyone's business, and I've always stood firm on that. I've always been the kind of person that I've never publicly ever stated who I will vote for. I throw out news clips, I throw out everything I need to throw out, and based upon that, you can know where I stand. I don't need to say anything. And I believe that you shouldn't. I believe you should keep that quiet, because it's better to keep it quiet, not because you're afraid or because it incites a little bit more, and people don't have the same understanding that you may have for certain details. So don't say it and don't encourage it, because really, you're telling people, well, because I am looking at it from this perspective and I'm voting on this perspective, you should too. No, that doesn't have to be that way. Okay? But you have to, number one, give credit to where credit is due. Number two, you have to be classy about certain things. And I think that we sort of lost that along the way in these last 4 days. You have all these artists coming out of the woodwork. The best one I have to say is, if you haven't seen it, go to The View. If you watch that, it's garbage. I don't watch it. But if you watch it, then I guess you know what Sonny Huston said, and what Whoopi Goldberg said. Sonny Huston certainly is half Puerto Rican. She's so proud. Meanwhile, the woman never talks about it. She aligns herself with another culture at 90%. Literally. She does. And she's such a bigot, and I have to use that word. I'm gonna use it. And based upon the way she behaved with her rant, guess what? She made us look like garbage. Yep, that's what she did with the way she ranted. You see? So let's not do that. Let's not go on a rant. Let's not pretend to be something that we're not. Taper it down. Taper it down. Look at the most important things, the things that are very, very important, you have to look at. And for those people who are influencers, I'm not an influencer. I just exist. I'm a human being, but I'm not an influencer. For those people that are out there, well, it was a joke, you know, they gotta understand. No, you gotta put yourself in the people's shoes. You have to understand that there's a lot of tension for them right now. There is an identity crisis for them right now coming up in November. Who are they going to be? You know, are they going to stay with us? Are they not going to stay with us? You have to understand that it was just a little bit out of line, and there has to be a little bit more empathy. But I would encourage those Puerto Ricans who decided to fly off the freaking handle with it, and mouth off the way they were mouthing off. Don't make yourself look like garbage. Taper it down. Don't make yourself look like garbage. Don't give them a reason to call you garbage. Okay? Don't do that. Remember who you are. Remember that there's a little bit more to everything. There's always a little bit more to everything. And lastly, I'm going to tell you, I find it not even offensive, but I find it disturbing that not even 48 hours after this comedian made the comment he made, that your commander-in-chief decides to do monkey see, monkey do. Literally, he did the same exact thing by calling those people, you know, who attended the rally, garbage. And then you have your woke reporters saying that they were white supremacists. As far as I know, my understanding is that there were multiple cultures there. Multiple. So if they were white supremacists, that's a problem. That means your average Black American, African American man, woman that was there, well, they must have painted themselves white. They had to, because they're white nationalists. Very disturbing to know that he said what he said, and those people, even within Christian circles, even those that were ranting and going bananas on the page, even on my page, because I could see it, the behavior, they're angry, are silent. You're quiet. You haven't said one peep, at least not that I've seen. You didn't throw yourself up against the wall. You didn't go crazy texting everybody and their mother about what he just said. You see, the comedian said it, but for your commander-in-chief to say it, that's a problem. That's a big problem. Big problem. Big problem. And everyone is quiet. Look how sad that is. So, I'm going to end it here, okay? this Puerto Rican is tired. She has to go to work. She's had enough, all right? Some of you may like what I say, some of you may not. That's fine. I always tell people I wasn't created to be liked. I have a purpose, and you may not like it, but that's who I am, and that's how I live my life, with that purpose, okay? I understand you. I hope you can understand me, and I hope we can have a better outlook, because I think that's important. But I want you all to have a good night, a blessed night, and I will communicate again tomorrow. I think I'm going to do this again tomorrow, only because I have to make just a small announcement. But I'll do this again tomorrow. And I hope you have a blessed night and a blessed weekend. Take care.